Welcome back to Breakfast with Bob, Boston Marathon Edition. My name is Bob Babbitt. We're presented to you by Hyland's Leg Cramps. Stop the cramps, not your race. And the NormaTec Pulse Recovery System. The 120th Boston Marathon. Mike Ehredt is with us. And then in the center, our race director, 1980 Ironman. Is this 43 years in a row for you, Dave McGillivray?
44.
44. Wow. So take me back. First time you came to this race was what year?
72.
Yeah.
I was a, what they call one of those bandits.
Oh, you were on a band? I remember that.
There were no qualifying times.
Right.
But you had to be 18.
And
I was 17.
Yes.
So I just ran the race and dropped out in the hills in Newton.
Right.
Got taken to the Newton Wellesley Hospital in an ambulance. Learned my lesson.
Yeah.
Trained for the next one.
Right.
Officially registered. Finished that one. And I've been doing it ever since.
And it was something about that race that when you first finished it that I need to do this every year?
Well, my grandfather was a supporter of my athleticism, and he said he'd be there waiting for me, and unfortunately he passed away a few months before the race. And so as I ran, I was about to drop out of my second in a row because I was sick, and I dropped out at 21.5, and then I looked behind me, and there's the Evergreen Cemetery, and that's where my grandfather is buried. I didn't know it at the time, and I saw his tombstone, and I said, that son of a gun, he said he'd be here. And so he was there spiritually, maybe not physically, and I picked myself up and kept going, and I finished in 4.5 hours. And I said on that day in 1973 that I'd run this race every year for the rest of my life, and I've done just that.
And once you became race director, you had a change in terms of when you ran the race.
Yeah, well, again, I got offered the job to help manage it, so I had that conundrum of, do I run in it or run it? What do I do? And I needed the money, so I took the job. What would you do?
I would take the job.
I took the job.
Yeah.
So I was standing at the finish line waiting for everyone to finish, and I had this sort of shallow feeling in my gut saying, hey, I didn't do it.
Right.
So I tapped a state police trooper on the shoulder, and I said, officer, you do me a favor? He said, what's that? I said, will you drive me back to the start? He said, why? Did you forget something? I said, yeah, I forgot to run. So he drove me back out at 8 o'clock at night, and I ran it, finished at 11 o'clock at night, and I've been running it that way ever since.
So it wasn't planned. It was just something you knew you needed to keep your streak going.
Well,
or just you needed to do it.
Just the fact that I was standing there and seeing everyone, I'm an awful spectator.
It's awful.
It's awful.
Really hard.
You got to get in the game. And as an athlete, God bless everyone doing it, and I want to cheer for them, and I'm proud of them and all that, but I want to be one of them too.
Right.
So my game, my rules, and maybe my name's not in the record book, and maybe I don't get all the accolades and the cheering there's 6 pigeons and 3 squirrels out there when I'm running, right? But that's okay. But I've been able to maintain the streak, and it's getting more and more difficult. I mean, as I age, being on my feet all day, not really eating properly, all that stress of the day, and then getting out there and having to I got to run 26.2 myself, But it's the calm after the storm, and I really look forward to it every year.
Like it. So, Mike Ehredt, tell me a little bit about, you've been not just running across the U.S., but you've been bringing attention to some of our servicemen who've been lost in the line of duty.
Sure, yeah. It started actually like 37 years ago. 1979, I was in the service.
Yeah.
And, some people, you spend your whole life waiting for that one thing you really feel that is important that you should do. And so I just wanted to not forget our service members from Iraq and Afghanistan. I wasn't trying to make a statement.
Right.
So I had wanted to create a wall of flags from west to east, north to south. And each spot was GPSed with the name, age, rank, hometown.
So every mile along the way.
Every mile.
For both those routes, and you ran, the first one was how many miles?
4,424. The second one was 2,146.
Oh, my God.
So the wall is, like I said, across the country and up and down, and I touched the water on all 4 sides, so it's legit.
So what's next? You're still...
Well, there was a few fatalities since I've ended my runs.
Yes.
And so on May 24th, in northern Idaho where I live, I start a 300-mile run around a city park, a 1-mile loop, left-hand turns all the time.
Yes.
And I place a flag at the end of each mile in a giant mural of the country, and that brings me up to date. And,
I love that. So, and both you guys, you ran back. I remember when I was getting ready
Before he was born.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember getting ready for the 80 Ironman. I remember we had to do those little bios. And my bio was basically, I'm a PE teacher and have done nothing. And then I'm looking at, Dave Scott, John Howard, and Dave McGillivray. I still remember. I ran 3,000 miles from Medford, Oregon to Medford, Mass. And I'm like, oh, who am I? What am I trying to do here with these guys? So, what was that experience like for you, running across the country?
Well, again, not a lot of people had done it up until that point in time. In fact, a gentleman by the name of Adam Kimball just finished his run across the country yesterday.
Really?
And another individual started their run across the country last week, a visually impaired, blind individual.
Yeah.
You need a traffic cop out there now. I mean, it's amazing how many people now are doing this run across the United States.
Yeah.
And but again, it's all one of these things where those of us who just need that additional challenge,
right.
And for me, I heard about a friend who had biked across America, and I thought if you could bike across, I could run across.
Right.
Well, what an idiot! Biking and running are a little bit different, as you know.
Yeah.
And but I just said, I gotta do this, and I read a book by Bruce Tello from England, who ran across the country in 4 million footsteps. Another gentleman by the name of Don Shepard from South Africa. So you had all these international people who had run across America, and I said, where are these Americans that are doing it? So I just said, I'm doing it, and I trained for about 4 years, and I went out and did it.
4 years.
And then I ran up the east coast of America from Winter Haven, Florida. So Mike and I've been we've been going up and down, but different directions. So I've seen the country from a different perspective than he has.
What was the toughest? A lot of times when people do stuff like this, the running itself becomes secondary to the logistics of just getting it from.
It's so funny you say that because prior to doing this, trying to find a sponsor, and back then there's no GPS, no cell phones. I was getting my AAA maps out with a string and just trying to determine how many miles this thing is. And I actually lost more weight planning this thing than I did running across the country. I lost 9 pounds running 3,400 miles. Not a great weight loss diet program.
No.
You want to lose 9 pounds? Run across the country. That'll do it. Not many people are going to sign up for that.
Best weight loss program.
Now, Mike, you're doing a documentary on yours?
The documentary is done. It's called 12 Million Steps. And it chronicles the second run.
Yes.
It's about an hour long. And it's about the stories of the people along the way that I met and the whole thing. And it's, it's like Dave says, we all have this one thing we need. Maybe it's a challenge. And even to this day, and I'm sure he can probably attest too, you miss being out on the road like that. Life is pretty simple.
It's point A to point B, one foot in front of the other. What'd you do crew-wise?
I had a support crew of 3 guys following me in a motorhome. So I would wake up. My routine was just the exact same thing every single day.
Yeah.
Didn't take one day off because I figured if I took one day off, I'd take another day off and another. I'd still be out there trying to get through this thing.
Yes.
So it was like up at 5:30, out on the road at 6:30, 10-mile splits, 5-minute break, 10 mile, 10 mile, 10 mile. My guys would take off 45 minutes after I did. They'd go to the 10-mile point, and then they'd pass me, make sure I'm okay. They get to 10, I'd rest and do it again every single day for 80 straight days. Averaged about 50 miles every day.
So for you, after 2013, what were the biggest challenges you faced with this event? Just the fact that all of a sudden, it was obviously this is the most important marathon in the world, but it became an international story because of the bombings. How did everything have to change, and what were the challenges you faced?
Well, of course, the first thing, our thoughts and prayers went out to the victims.
Of course.
And to the families who lost loved ones and those who lost limbs. So we were dealing with that for quite some time.
Yes.
But also, some people were thinking that maybe we shouldn't come back. Maybe we shouldn't do this. Yeah, the initial reaction was of fear. Right. Bombs went off. Right. So, but then only a couple days later, it just went 180.
Flipped.
People said, we will not be denied our running freedom. Perseverance and determination, and we're coming back. And then our biggest challenge was, what do we do with all this? Everybody was making recommendations and suggestions. You should do this and have these people come back and those people come back. We were thinking this thing could be 100,000 people.
Easy.
And so who do we say no to? And so it took us about 6 months before we were able to determine what exactly this thing would be. And then we only had a few more months left to plan it. And we went from 27,000 to 36,000. Again, we have no more real estate today to direct this thing that they had 100 years ago, right?
Right, yeah.
And then the heightened level of security, and that was an unknown. So we didn't know. It was like starting all over again. We had no idea. Can you put that truck there and put that tent up there?
There was a new normal. You had to change everything.
Had to change everything. And we didn't really know everything until right before the gun went off. So it's like starting all over again. And then this 2015 last year, you know, it kind of we got accepted to it, right? I think this year is a phenomenon because there's a sense of calmness and peacefulness this year. People aren't talking as much about the bombing. We're getting back into the race. People are focused on the race, which is what they should be, right? Of course, we're today, being, the 15th and moment of silence at 2:49, and we'll never forget what happened, and we'll never forget the victims. But at the same time, we have to move on.
Yes.
We have to move on, and I think this is that watershed year to move on.
What is it about this race, obviously 120 years, but what makes it so special where people want to come back every year and just be here?
Well, it's the Holy Grail. It's the Promised Land. It's where else can someone in sports be able to participate with the best in the business and run on the same course that the best marathoners ever in the existence of mankind ran on this course, and be able to say, I did that too. It's the history, it's tradition, it's the course itself, the character of the course, Heartbreak Hill, the crowd, the fans, the experience, the expertise behind it. It just doesn't get any better than this.
What's been your favorite moment from your nighttime runs when you're? Obviously, it must be pretty calming.
Well, when I first started doing it, remember, people are out on their porches and their decks partying, and by the time I came through, they had one too many, and so they'd be screaming and yelling at me, "Hey, you slug, pick it up! Why don't you train next year for this thing?"
You're 4 hours behind.
Oh man, the old man went by, the street sweepers go by, they're throwing their beer cans at me, and so I'm like, wow, talk about Rodney Dangerfield. I get no respect, right? So only a few years ago, I was running through Ashland, Framingham, and this guy started yelling at me, and another guy sitting next to him in a lounge chair, and he goes, "Hey, leave him alone. That's the race director." So I felt like Steve Martin in the movie The Jerk. You look in the phone book and you see your name and you go, "I'm somebody now." Finally they realized that I started only a few hours ago, not 10.
The other thing I love is when you came to Ironman for the first time, because people now see Boston, they see Ironman. These are big brands, but they don't realize that someone like yourself went to your first Ironman. It was 108 people, and you find out when you go to sign up that day, or not sign up, but to get your stuff, oh, you need a crew.
Right.
And, you go online and find a crew? What'd you do to get a crew?
They threw Hank Redman threw the phone book at me. He says, "You need a crew. There's no aid out there. There's no directional signs. Good luck to you if you don't have somebody." So I started dialing phone numbers in Honolulu, and I found a Navy SEAL guy with his little daughter, and he said, "Yeah, I'll crew for you." And they came, picked me up at the hotel. I took my Peugeot bike, and I put it on his Honda Civic on his roof, and we drove to the start, leaned it against a tree, and jumped in the water.
Is it amazing how our world has changed since early running, early Boston, early Ironman? You went back to Ironman just year before last. What did that feel like?
It was intimidating. For me, it was.
Yeah.
Because the last time I had done it 25 years ago, and they were hardcore. None of the gizmos. I'm old school.
Sure.
Right? I don't run with all the belts and all that stuff. I just lace them up and go. You're probably the same way.
Mike's the same way.
We just
Here you go.
Leave me alone. Yeah, I'm out old school, right? And so when I went back there and I'm lined up next to Apollo Ono and all these people with their $10 million bikes, and I'm like,
GPS.
what am I doing here, right? But once the gun fired, I was in the moment, and I said, this is where I want to be, and I was able to crank through it and get it done.
Love that. So, Mike, are you running on Monday?
Yes, that'll be my fourth one, and it's interesting because I waited like 38 years
to run this.
But thinking about what we talked about when you asked me about Boston, how special it is. I remember as a kid, six years old, running around schoolyard. We all knew what Boston was.
Sure.
And even now, people who don't even run, they know what Boston is. But I waited 38 years to come here for the first time in 2013. And I was like, and it's funny how paths diverge and cross, and here we are today.
Love it.
It's so special.
Mike Ehredt, Dave McGillivray, thank you both. Dave, I'm sure this next couple of days is pretty mellow for you, so if you need something to do, let me know.
You put a thought in my head. You have breakfast with Bob.
Yes.
I want to start dinner with Dave.
I like that.
How do you like that?
I want to be your first
guest.
I want to be a guest. This is Breakfast with Bob. We are at the Boston Marathon, 120th. My name is Bob Babbitt. We're presented to you by Hyland's Leg Cramps. Stop the cramps, not your race, and the NormaTec Pulse Recovery System. Hold on, everybody. We will be right back.